Okay, my name is Charlie Hill, and I was diagnosed HIV positive in September of 2004. Living in a small community such as Tony or Harvest or Coleman, Florence, they're thinking it's somewhere else. It's in Atlanta, it's in San Francisco, it's in the larger cities. Don't be fooled. HIV knows no boundaries. It knows no color lines. It knows no financial status. It doesn't recognize any of that.
I do remember the first time that I had to give a test result to somebody that I knew, that I had to give them a positive test result. And that was very, very hard. The person had been a supporter of ours. He had gotten multiple tests over the years, and he was always negative. We kind of joked that he would come to me for once a year to get a test, and then we'd catch up with each other and see what he was doing, and he would find out what's going on at the clinic. And at one point not too long ago, I had to give him a positive test result, and he is in care today.
Initially, when he told us, we all hugged and cried together for a good while. And over the years, there were many times when things would come up, particularly when he would lose a close friend to AIDS. He would come to us and share his hurt and again express fears that maybe that would happen to him soon, and we would reassure him and go through this same supportive process and kind of heal one another, I suppose.
My nieces and nephew are older, and my niece was driving. My mother was sitting in the back seat. And my nephew it was a huge lollipop. And my niece mentioned he was placing it on my niece's face, taunting her with it. And she said, "I'm not sure where that lollipop's been." My mother, having known I was HIV positive, she said, "Well, I wouldn't lick it because it may have AIDS." Can I say that it was chills or goosebumps that went up my spine? And I sat there, not saying a word, letting for the moment pass until my mother realized what she had said. She didn't have to say anything. She just put her hand on my leg and gave it a squeeze. And she said, "I didn't mean to." And I said, "I know you didn't, but you have to remember, I'm HIV positive." It's funny when you would say, "Do you ever forget?" I don't think that there are times when I don't remember that I'm HIV positive, but my family never forgets.
I've always been a very open person about my status. I do not mind people knowing about my status. What I'm concerned about living in a smaller town is how people are going to receive my children and my husband because of my status.
When I was doing public speaking and public education, and it's absolutely true today, I would tell people, there's not a restaurant in this town where you've eaten that we've not had somebody in the kitchen flipping hamburgers or preparing the sauce or what have you. Every restaurant in this town has had somebody who is one of our clients who's been living with HIV and AIDS, and that's not how you're going to contact the virus.
Especially when we do testing for people just off the street if they come in and want to have an HIV test. Well, they looked clean. They go to college with me. They're in my classes. They're fine. But I just want to make sure for me that I don't have HIV. So there is a misperception that you can tell by looking at someone that they have HIV.
I'm in contact with someone living or dealing with HIV on a daily basis and probably don't even know it. And that it exists in this community. We have over 550 clients in the 12 counties of North Alabama.
The four major body fluids that everyone needs to think about not coming in contact with are blood, semen, vaginal secretions, and breast milk. The ways that you come in contact with HIV are by coming in contact with an infected person through blood-to-blood contact or having unprotected sex. Doesn't make any difference what kind of sex that is. That can be vaginal sex, anal sex, oral sex. does not make any difference. It's coming in contact with the fluid that puts people at risk.
When I was recruited to be the executive director, I had not come from a background of HIV and AIDS. And I remember literally the first day, our office in those days was a little two-office, it was a two-room office on Church Street. And the outgoing volunteer director, who died within about 2 months of my coming on board, was in the advanced stages of AIDS at that point. And I can remember walking back to the bathroom in this office and looking down at the commode and thinking, well, kid, you either believe or you don't believe about how this thing is transmitted.
As a community, we need to have an open discussion. It's not a pretty disease. I think the reason that the news coverage covers, they want to cover lots of other issues, but because this isn't pretty. And, unfortunately, it's just the way it is. And it doesn't get a lot of coverage, and it should.
We need to do a much better job of talking about HIV from very early ages so that it is just a natural part of thinking about prevention.
I've always felt that it was important to educate my children, and we've had an open dialogue ever since they were young. And of course, the issues are not always, they need to be age appropriate, but you can start these conversations at a very, very young age and then become more specific as kids get older. But yes, we have always been very open about that in our family.
I'd like to see us talk openly about condoms, talk openly about this disease, talk openly about the high-risk behaviors that can lead a person to becoming infected, talk about the dysfunction and the stressors that can put a person in the kind of situation where he or she could become vulnerable to being infected.
I mean, I guess they're just so confident that they aren't positive, that they feel that they don't need to get a test, so they don't do it. But then, I mean, of course, I feel that, you need to be as cautious as possible and just go whenever you feel that you are in a position to have gotten HIV/AIDS. I was asked to speak at Randolph High School, and it was actually my first public event. Now, with close friends and relatives, I can talk about my HIV status with no problem, but to speak in an open forum where it was high school students, I was quite nervous. But after a few moments, the tension broke, and one young lady stood up and asked me, she said, it must take a lot of strength. She said, I admire you to get up every day and to face being HIV positive. Well, I thought about it for a moment, and I thought, well, it's everyday existence.
I don't want to be pitied, I think, because the life that I have is actually better than a lot of people are living, because, see, I know that I'm living a mortal life. We all are living mortal lives. We're all mortal. But I think when we're younger, we feel like we're immortal. I've had the privilege of actually coming so close to death that I thought I was going to die. And by having that experience and that privilege, I've had the privilege of understanding just how precious life is. And then for that, living it in a more fulfilled way, each and every moment, treasuring it, living it to this max, so that I can really make sure that my life is a purpose, a fulfillment, not just for myself, but for everyone I come across.